This is big breaking news. Top White House officials are now warning of, quote, mass chaos could break out in the next few days or the next week. He is warning that things are deteriorating very quickly, and by next week, at the end of this week, things could be a lot worse. We are also seeing a, quote, bomb threat that went out, shutting down one of the biggest airports in the country and in Washington, D.C. So let's get into all the details here. You guys can see it says Department of Transportation might be forced to shut down some airspace next week. This is according to Secretary Sean Duffy. And he said, quote, "You will see mass chaos." We will get into more of that in just a second. You can also see here, it says chaos across America as bomb threat halts all flights in and out of Washington, D.C. This was at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. We will get into more details of that in just a minute, but let's watch this video really quick on exactly what Secretary Duffy said, and he's warning that things could deteriorate quickly. This could affect the supply chain. This could affect mail deliveries. It's estimated that if this goes into full effect, they're going to be shutting down parts of the airspace in the U.S., so entire zones will be shut down to planes, and also deliveries will be affected, and that could pile up very quickly, and it's estimated around $5 billion per day could be at loss from the economy from airspace being shut down. So let's listen to this really quick.
Transportation Secretary Duffy here is again warning this could get worse. What happens if they have to close airspace in some areas?
This is probably the most dire warning that we've heard from the Secretary of Transportation during this shutdown. If they don't have enough air traffic controllers, they won't risk it. They will reduce the number of planes in the air so that the controllers who are working are able to safely manage that airspace. But if you have more than the usual people, calling out sick, you may have to shut down airspace in portions of the country. Let's listen to what the Secretary said just a few moments ago.
If you bring us to a week from today, Democrats, you will see mass chaos, you will see mass flight delays, you'll see mass cancellations, and you may see us close certain parts of the airspace because we just cannot manage it because we don't have the air traffic controllers.
And a similar situation happened in 2019.
All right, so you heard that there. We'll play more of this in just a second, but he said you could see mass chaos. And he also said that they could be closing airspace as well, too, which is next level. And this is on track to be the largest shutdown in history by tomorrow. Okay, so this is going to be record-breaking and unprecedented. We've never really gotten to this point where things have been shut down this long. So if this does continue, especially further into November, which I've seen multiple representatives say they've seen talks of it potentially going past Thanksgiving even, then this could cause major issues for flight traffic and the economy itself. We'll dive more into that, but let's listen to this.
On day 34 and day 35, and that is what many believe ultimately ended the shutdown during the last round.
Sam, are there any tips to be gleaned here for travelers, or is it just show up early, check in often, and hope for the best?
Yeah, I mean, really, this is like, kind of Russian roulette here. You don't know where the controller is going to go out, which facilities they're going to call out from. There are air traffic control facilities in this country that control airspace across multiple states. So, for example, Denver Center is an air traffic control center in Denver, but it handles all of the air traffic above 18,000 feet in parts of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. So if you get a couple of controllers who call out there, that impacts a lot of people in a lot of different states. So it really just depends on where these call-outs happen to who's affected.
So you heard that there. If places like Denver went down, then entire airspaces in Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado could be shut down as well too. right? So, because the resources are just not as abundant, there's not as many air traffic controllers, and there's just not as many airports in general in this part of the country. So we could see flights totally restricted over these states. And then what do you do as well when planes are flying across the country? Okay, this could potentially even affect flights that are flying over. Okay, most likely they will divert, but it could make the flights longer because they don't want to be flying over airspace where there's no air traffic controllers and they have nowhere to land, potentially in some type of emergency. They like to have these places open so they can get there. They can land safely multiple different locations along the route if they need to, right? So this is turning into a big one, right? I think this is going to be one of the biggest forces that does encourage them to reopen the government is the flights and also the benefits delay too, and for things like SNAP, EBT. So mass chaos, right? Something to think about too is that I've read projections this could affect up to around $5 billion per day in economic GDP losses. So if that goes on for a month, $150 billion loss, and that's a lot of money. Okay, it affects tourism and it affects businesses directly too that depend on e-commerce and shipping, and this could eventually have far-reaching effects too for even things like manufacturing, where they need these special parts or equipment quickly, and they're not able to get these parts because there's delays in shipping, right? It's a small percentage of parcels are shipped through air traffic, but a lot of companies like Amazon, FedEx, UPS, they have their own planes as well too, and they will even be affected from this as well. They might not be able to land their planes and make deliveries in certain areas if the airspace is shut down, right? So deliveries could be delayed, have to go through ground shipments, or just canceled entirely. For certain products may not be available, like things like if you're buying, shouldn't be too much of an issue right now, but I'm just thinking of things like live chicks. Okay, if you're in the springtime, when you're buying chicks, maybe if you're down south, you're buying them now because it's not that cold, but you get the live chicks you shipped overnight from the hatchery, and they might not be able to get them there overnight. Okay, so things like that might become unavailable. And then if there's, let's say there's a manufacturing plant that needs these certain parts to keep things going, they might have delays. It could turn into a snowball effect where a bunch of these little issues start turning into bigger issues that then affect other businesses too. Now the manufacturing plants shut down. Now all the companies that depend on the manufacturing plant for their parts, they're delayed for a week or two, okay, for the shipment to get through. And it's going to congest ground deliveries as well too. So it's far-reaching impacts, all right, from these shutdowns. So he's saying prepare for mass chaos, and we're already seeing that at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. It says chaos across America as bomb threat halts all flights in and out of DC. It says here a security emergency was issued at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. The ground stop was lifted at 1 p.m. Eastern Time and replaced with a ground delay, causing average waits of 51 minutes and delays of up to 151 minutes for some flights. It says here, DCA is set to be under a security-related arrival management program until 11:59 p.m. The bomb threat was made known after travelers stranded on the runway heard there was an emergency on a United flight that landed from Houston, which was quickly surrounded by emergency vehicles. Ben Radnor posted online, quote, on a Delta flight waiting to take off to JFK, apparently a bomb threat on a United flight that landed from Houston not too long ago. Nothing is allowed to move. So this flight was a United flight that was flying from Houston and had to make this emergency landing. It says the delays at DCA are now rippling across the U.S. as grounded and late arrivals flights are creating congestion at other airports. Passengers can expect knock-on delays nationwide, including at connecting hubs and in parts of Canada. So we keep seeing this sketchy stuff going on with our planes as well too. Just a few days ago, there was a man that attacked someone on a flight. I believe it was in Illinois. Let me look this up for you guys really quick. This flight made an emergency landing because a man attacked someone with a fork, I believe is what happened. He stabbed 2 teenagers with a metal fork on a flight here. I'm trying to get this article up for you guys. You can see here it says, this is from USA Today. It says here, passenger accused of stabbing teens with fork on Lufthansa flight. Not sure if I pronounced that right. But you can see here this was posted on October 28th. Sorry about all these ads here. This is kind of ridiculous. Some of these sites that they have these ads on, I can't even read the article here, but this happened last week. It says a flight from Chicago to Frankfurt, Germany on October 25th made an emergency landing in Boston after a man allegedly stabbed 2 other passengers with a metal fork, according to authorities. The man was identified as Pranith Kumar Usaripalli, who's 28, and the man is being charged with 1 count of assault with a dangerous weapon with intent to do bodily harm while traveling on an aircraft. It says he's an Indian national who had previously been admitted to the U.S. on a student visa for a master's program in biblical studies. He was on the flight 431, which departed Chicago O'Hare International Airport on time at 4:26 p.m. for the nearly 8-hour journey to Frankfurt Airport. So, it says during the flight, he allegedly stabbed 2 17-year-old passengers seated next to each other with a metal fork, one in the left shoulder area and the other at the back of the head, according to charging documents. At the time of the attack, the first victim had been sleeping in the middle seat and awoke to the attacker standing above him. Quote, when the flight crew members attempted to subdue him, he allegedly raised his hands, formed a gun with his fingers, and put it in his mouth and pulled an imaginary trigger. The release continue. He also is accused of slapping a nearby female passenger trying to hit a crew member. Alright, so pretty wild. It says a diversion was necessitated by the behavior of the unruly passenger who was taken into custody by local authorities upon arrival. It says a flight landed safely at Boston Logan International Airport at around 10:46 p.m., where he was removed and arrested. While the date for his appearance is not yet determined, he faces up to 10 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release, a maximum fine of $250K. Okay, so I don't know what's going on with flights recently, but there's been a lot of just these weird stories. I think this was at the beginning of this year, or maybe it was at the end of last year, where an Alaskan Airlines flight, sorry about that, the door flew off, ripped off in the middle of the flight, and they had to make an emergency landing, and they were just flying around with one of the emergency exit doors just wide open. Okay, thankfully no one was sitting there next to the door when it happened. It was a miracle, and nobody was really hurt. But there's just been all these weird things going on. All right, and then these are particularly dangerous too because it's somebody attacking people on a flight. You're trapped on this flight. There's nowhere to go. It's a dangerous situation. You're just up in the air. The pilots can be attacked potentially. It's very sketchy, and these people were sleeping when they're attacked. It's not even like this was some type of argument or something along those lines. That would still not be good, but it doesn't seem to be any like clear motive either. Okay, so that's concerning as well, because why are you doing this on a flight? Are you just trying to attack people, trying to cause chaos? I'm not sure exactly. The information on it is kind of thin. And just one note too is, this person isn't even from the United States, so they could be potentially removed as well from these charges. I'm not sure what kind of like visa they're on or whatever they're on, or if they are on a visa, but that potentially could be revoked due to any type of charges like this. All right, so they could potentially face even deportation, removal, or something along those lines too. Maybe they were already leaving, they were already going to Germany, so maybe they're already trying to leave, but we will see. But just something to be aware of is that this is all happening too while there's less air traffic controllers, while the government shut down. There's not as much, the protocols are not normal right now. Okay, so we could see more of these things slip through the cracks while things are shut down. And it's just something to be aware of and prepared for. And just to be careful if you're taking any of these flights for anything like this, any disturbances, and also just major delays that we could see. You could be stranded at an airport for days if the airspace that you landed in, like let's say you take a connecting flight to Denver, and then within the time that you're waiting for your connecting flight, 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is, they can no longer continue operations and they have to shut down airspace, and now you have to wait a whole another day just to get out of there until they can get air traffic controllers, or who knows how long till they can get people in there. So just something to be aware of. Hope you guys are staying safe, staying prepared. Don't be scared, be prepared. I hope you have big blessings for your life and your family, and I hope you have a big old blessed day.